Not politically conservative, conservative as in keep things going the way they are. So that can make it a little bit difficult for people like us who think that we want to do things better, who think that we have a better way of doing computing. Now let's go and imagine that things are bad. Instead, everything's totally different. Stuff is terrible, people are unhappy, we're all uncomfortable, and we're all in pain, everything's on fire, everything's really, really, really bad. And that's not great, we don't want that. On the other hand, there's a silver lining to the cloud of everything being bad, which is change suddenly looks a lot less risky. When things are already bad, people think, well, we're already bad, we might as well try something else to see what works. So the barrier to entry, the barrier to change falls quite a bit. And this is something that is, I would posit, quite relevant to KDE. So now, how are we doing? How is this world that we're inhabiting? I would suggest, in a lot of ways, things aren't great right now. It depends on the country that you live in. In my country, things are not looking super duper amazing. To maybe undersell things a little bit, you can look at the country that you live in, but this seems to be a bit of a worldwide phenomenon. A lot of things that were previously stable are no longer stable. Things are unstable, things are bad. And this is a time of great change. We are not in a time of complacent conservatism anymore. But here's the thing. All of us here are not only citizens of the world, but we're members of this awesome community called KDE, and KDE is actually thriving. KDE is doing great. You've heard from a lot of different people at this conference already about the state of KDE. We're growing in terms of popularity. We're growing in terms of quality. We've got deployments going on throughout the world. KDE EV as an organization is getting huge amounts of donations. People really like what's going on. So there's sort of a contrast there between, I'm going to move the pointer over here so it doesn't annoy people. I know it's annoying me. There's a big contrast between the world and KDE. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? So the thesis of this talk is that when there's chaos, there's opportunity for change that wasn't necessarily there before, and that KDE can potentially take advantage of this. Because in that chaos, there are some trends that actually look pretty good for KDE. We have unprecedented skepticism of big tech. In all of those worrying nationalistic trends, we've got European governments and even the EU being more interested than ever before in moving away from foreign tech and onshoring with European solutions. KDE, of course, counts as that. There's increasing skepticism of cloud-native solutions where you just put your data on somebody else's computer. We've got AI everywhere, but an increasing backlash against that. Windows 11 has not been super duper popular. We're already seeing that KDE has this campaign to encourage people to not move to it, especially if your hardware is too old. And there are more public funding opportunities. So this all looks pretty good for KDE in a lot of ways. So let's paint a picture about what it might look like if KDE is able to take advantage of all these opportunities. Some of these topics are near and dear to my heart. Some of these might be for you as well. But one thing that I think is quite possible is that we get Plasma pre-installed on a lot more computers, so people can adopt it more easily. It means that we get more large deployments, like the type that Patrick was talking about earlier, not deployments of one person helping another person switch their personal laptop or a little local hacker group, but 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 machines being migrated all at once. Huge, huge, huge opportunity there. And if we get both of those factors, if we have more hardware pre-installed and we have large deployments going on, I think it's quite possible that KDE ends with a very high market share, a significant one, maybe even something like 15%. Now 15% is not 100%, but 15% I would argue, is the point at which you have to be taken seriously. For most of Apple's history, Mac OS has had a market share of under 12%. Apple was still a major player in the market. They still had lots of third-party developers developing software for them, and that was with a very small market share. Right now, the worldwide Linux market share is, I think we've seen numbers at about 5% or so. It's not quite above that threshold, but 15% market share, especially if it's KDE, we're taken seriously. All sorts of things become unlocked. And with that, it means anybody who wants a job working on KDE can probably find one, because there's big money when there's big opportunities and big deployments. And ultimately that means that people like us can continue to do what we love doing in some capacity. So that looks great, right? The world sucks, but KDE is awesome. But it's not all amazing, because we have to be ready for this opportunity. This is an opportunity. It's not something that is always there. It's not something that's just always in the background. It's something that's happening right now as a result of world events. And when things are bad and stuff is on fire and people want to fix it so that they can stop experiencing pain, people who are leaders and decision makers in all sorts of fields, they go and they start looking for solutions, or they task their lieutenants with bringing them options so that they can try to choose between them. And one of the amazing things about KDE is that we have a lot of solutions. We've been here for almost 30 years, building things that people can rely on, that institutions and corporations and nonprofits and schools can rely on. We have a lot of the things that they're looking for already. We've got this stuff. It's really cool. But our solutions need to be ready from a technical perspective, from some other perspectives. Otherwise, we get passed over. So I want to explore a little bit what, in my opinion, ready looks like for our software. I think there are a series of doors that you need to open, or that at least can't be locked. And the first one is that people need to know about it. If they don't know about it, it can't be evaluated. Should be pretty obvious. The next one is, once people know about it, they can't be immediately turned off by how it's presented. It can't be ugly, it can't be amateurish, it can't seem like it's some sort of hobbyist garage thing. Then once people's curiosity has been piqued, it needs to be easy to get, to try out, to evaluate. That's important too. During the evaluation phase, it needs to actually do what people want it to do. It needs to be suitable for the purpose. It needs to be adaptable for the goals. And then after that, you get to a lot of the very, very businessy topics that were talked about in an earlier presentation, things like support opportunities, things like total cost of ownership, economic arguments, impressing decision makers, things like that. So these are the doors that we need to make sure are not locked to KDE and KDE's software. I'm going to go through how I think Plasma is doing from this perspective. KDE has a lot of products. We have Plasma, we have, I think, 180-something apps. We have developer frameworks, we have lots of things, but Plasma is a product that I work quite a lot on, so I'm going to explore it from that perspective. And again, this is just my opinion. Maybe you think it's way better or way worse, but this is how I think Plasma is doing from that perspective. So let's go into Plasma's awareness. We have seen before that Plasma is doing really well on awareness from a sort of groundswell community perspective. Lots of nerds know about Plasma. That's all of us, as well as lots of other people. We have great word of mouth. Plasma's doing pretty well there. On the other hand, we sometimes struggle to break out of that bubble. We have solutions that work really well for a lot of people, but sometimes it's difficult for them to know about them. And we don't do a lot of what I think I would call conventional advertising. We do guerrilla advertising and marketing, but we don't take out full-page ads, in magazines, except for very recently. Apparently, we started doing this with KDE Eco and the End of 10 project, which is amazing. But maybe we need to do more of that, right? We've got, we don't do billboards. We don't do all sorts of traditional advertising, essentially. Next up, we've got presentability. I would argue Plasma is already perfectly sufficient here. It looks professional, it seems professional, it looks good, People like screenshots that they see. It has a nice website that demonstrates the product. Again, this doesn't mean it's perfect, but I think from this perspective, it's not bad enough to get rejected immediately. So I think that's okay. In terms of ease of access, this I think is a little bit more challenging. If you go to kde.org and look at Plasma, we don't have an easy download here button. The story is a little complicated. And we do have pre-installation on some devices from vendors, some big, some small, but this is limited. You know, if I go to Dell, there's like maybe one model, 0 models, it changes per year. Lenovo has a couple random models. A lot of the big enterprise ones don't really have these as options. And I think that's a problem when it comes to ease of access. Then we get to whether the product is suitable for people's purposes. In general, I think Plasma is doing pretty well here. Plasma has always been a very featureful desktop environment. We've got almost 30 years of those features behind us. Works pretty well. It's easy to use. It's got lots and lots of features. It's easy to adapt to your use case, which I think is also important. We often think of customization as something for, you know, people who are obsessed with tweaking or want to get a specific look, but this also is important for institutional and enterprise use cases too, because people need to make the product work for exactly their specific use case, and we've got that. On the reliability angle, Plasma has been getting better, for sure. There's a little bit more we can do there. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but I think there's opportunities that can be exploited there. Next, we've got things like total cost of ownership and support. We already saw in an earlier presentation that with some eyeballed numbers, it's possible that a Linux deployment in enterprise could be as little as 10% of the ultimate cost of replacing a bunch of machines with Windows 11 and then supporting that on an ongoing basis. So there's a definite economic argument to be made there. There's also support which needs to be done. There are indeed companies in KDE's orbit that offer commercial support. Several are represented at this very conference. Others can be created. So this is also something that exists and is not necessarily a blocker, in my opinion. And of course, the fact that the code is open and these companies exist means that companies can have it tailored to their needs. If a company says, here's something that we need for Plasma that isn't necessarily there, they can actually pay to have the product adapted, which is an advantage that doesn't exist with a lot of proprietary software that just comes off the shelf the way it is. And if it's going to be adapted, it's going to take a very long time. It's going to be super custom, really expensive, or it's going to need to be a third-party thing. We have advantages here. We really do. So I think Plasma has a lot of strengths, and strengths are great, but I'm kind of negative, so let's focus on the weak points, and then let's fix those things so that we can make it even better. Here's where I think Plasma struggles. Interestingly enough, it's not in a lot of the really substantive stuff. It works. It's presentable. It's got a lot of the support infrastructure, but we have trouble with the very first door. A lot of people don't even know about it. We know about it. People on Reddit know about it. People in and adjacent to our bubble know about the glory of Plasma and KDE, but we're unknown outside of that. We're not a household name. We're not even a corporate name. We're barely even an industry name. We find that we go to trade shows and conferences, and even people in the tech industry who you would expect to be somewhat familiar with open source and with KDE, they've never heard of us. They've never heard of Plasma. It's a problem. Easy to get is also something that we sometimes struggle with. We've got a fragmented story here about how you get it, and some parts of this can be good because we've got a lot of commercially supported operating systems out there, which work great if you want to forge a relationship with those companies and the companies in their orbit. But if you want to forge a relationship with KDE directly, it's a bit of a more complicated story, and complicated stories mean more difficult to accept. So I think there are ways that we can streamline that, and that will be important. But here's the thing. We're doing really well on the stuff that matters, because once you actually start using KDE software, once you start using Plasma, you love it. You love it forever. And I have some quotes here that I took from donations that we got recently. These are really nice. I'm just going to read these real fast because I think it deserves to be said because all of us have done excellent work. The first one says, Plasma has made my switch to Linux an absolute joy. I could go on and on about how much I love the customization, look, and feel. Instead, please take this donation as my most sincere thanks for everything you do. Kindest regards, Harry. Thank you, Harry. Thank you so much for your incredible work over the years. If I get rich while dailying KDE software, I'll increase the amount. That's nice. Let's hope this person gets rich and they can contribute more than €5. €5 is great, but let's make that 5 million euros. That would be super cool. Next, I use Plasma on all my computers. It is essential for me and a huge part of my life at this point. And I thank all the maintainers greatly. So this is a sampling of how people feel about the work that we've done. The work that we've done is incredible. With mostly volunteers and a small amount of sponsored development, we've created products that rival those of literal trillion-dollar corporations. The fact that we're even having this discussion and comparing our work to theirs is a tribute to how incredible this work is. So I want you all to give yourself a round of applause real fast, because it's super great. You all did this. People really do love us. And as it says, I cherry-picked these. But it wasn't hard, because nobody donates and then leaves a negative message, so there weren't those. Notice I stacked the deck by looking at donation messages and not Phoronix comments. But, you know, I'm allowed to. It's my presentation. So if you accept my thesis that Plasma's big problems are lack of awareness and lack of ease of adoption, those are some big picture topics, and I think there are some to-dos that we can think about for how we can make this story better. So let's go through those. I think there are a couple things that are very important to addressing this. The first one is to advertise what we've got outside of our bubble. Some of this can be traditional advertisement, some of this can be going to trade shows and directly engaging with decision makers and people who are looking at solutions for the problems that they have. But somehow we need to be bolder about telling the world what we've created, because it's amazing. I think we need to do a little bit of it to make it easier to get, to make that a simpler story. Maybe it's not an impossible story, but it's not a bulletproof, obvious, completely simple story. And I think that's important too. There are other topics when it comes to large corporate deployments and sponsored deployments and institutional deployments. There are often legal requirements that have to be met. One that we've seen from the EU is around accessibility. We need to make sure that we're keeping abreast of those things so that our solutions can be considered and don't get rejected immediately because we don't tick every box or because we tick fewer boxes than others if nobody ticks all the boxes. So that's important. And we need to make Plasma friendlier for pre-installation so that vendors who are getting tired of Windows are able to take our offering and use it without a huge amount of drama and headache. I think that's important. If we think that these are important, there are some things from this perspective that I think we can count as a little bit less important. I'm not saying these are bad to do or that they're unuseful topics, but from the perspective of getting Plasma more widely deployed, I think these are things we don't have to focus on as much. We talk a lot about aesthetics. I think we all care about this, but Plasma looks pretty good. It's not bad. I don't think we need a ton more features either. I mean, there's always individual things when especially customers want stuff, but Plasma is very featureful. We don't need to redesign the website every 6 months. We don't. That's good. I don't think we need to start doing that. I don't think that's helpful. Customizability is something we're already very strong on. We have customizability for individuals. We also have customizability for deployments, for vendors. This is a strong suit of ours. We can keep it. And maybe here's another one. KDE does a lot of really good guerrilla marketing right now. We have a good way of reaching people, you know, with memes and through social media and stuff. This is super great, and we're already doing a great job at it. I think it's time for us to move into the big leagues and communicate with people in other ways too. So if these things are important, we should be working on them. And I'd like to tie some things together here, because these are topics that KDE has been working on for a while. Some of these are sponsored by KDE EV. Some of these are volunteer-driven. Some of these are externally supported. But these are broad topics that all, when taken together, address those things. We've got a promo team that promotes KDE, and the promo team has massively stepped up their attendance to external events. If you read the KDE annual report for the year 2024, you'll see that we went to like 5 times as many external events last year than we did in previous years, because we want to be reaching people who we haven't been reaching before. It's really important. We've been doing public workshops. The grant that we have for the end of 10 work and the nachhaltige Software für nachhaltige Hardware, it's part of that. That's why we're doing that. And then there's also maybe a silly thing, but we've worked really hard to make Plasma YouTuber friendly, and we have a lot of YouTube reviews these days. It's silly, but these are ways to reach massive numbers of people. I mean, tons of people don't have traditional TV service. They get their entertainment online, and there are channels that have hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers. And when we can be presented favorably there, it gets disseminated super duper widely. This is very important. On the ease of adoption side, it's why there's been work on creating a next generation KDE operating system, KDE Linux. We heard about that yesterday. It's why KDE EV has been sponsoring work on the out-of-box experience so that it's easier to get stuff on hardware and get it pre-installed on hardware. It's why we've been also sponsoring work on accessibility, very important topic. And it's why we've also been sponsoring work to get stuff working better on fancy hardware. A lot of this investment comes from outside too, especially from vendors who care about that hardware. So it's all kind of coming together, basically. But all of these big pictures are made up of a bunch of small details. Now, I know we all love details here. We are super obsessed with details. But all I'm saying here is that we need to make sure that the details we focus on are advancing the big pictures that we care about. This is the big picture that I care about, so I like it when people focus on these details. You are welcome to focus on whatever details you want that advances your big picture, but never forget that there is a big picture. No matter what it is we're working on, that big picture is what matters. And if we're working on details that don't advance the big picture of our choosing, I won't say we're wasting our time, but it's time that we're not going to be able to get back if we decide that we want to work on a different thing. Time is ultimately the only resource we cannot get back at all. There's a limited amount of it that we have. So I think it's important for us to be spending it on the things that we find to be really important. Let's get a little bit detailed here. Here's some examples. So from this perspective, a big picture thing to focus on is who we can enable to use our software if we implement stuff, and which third-party developers are we empowering to use our ecosystem if we do this. Those are really important topics for this. Less important is tweaking the code to have a more consistent variable style, right? I'm sure it looks nicer, but this doesn't move the needle. I'm also going to pick on designers a little bit here. Changing the margins, tiny bit, doesn't help. Probably looks better, doesn't help from this perspective. And here's the thing. This window of opportunity that we have right now will close. Right now, it seems like a lot of things in the world are on fire, but it won't always be this way because humans find this situation intolerable. A lot of things that are really bad in human history have relatively short durations because we don't like it when stuff is like this. Eventually, we're going to return to a world of normalcy where there is a new normal. And the question is whether that new normal is going to include a heck of a lot of KDE and Linux, or whether we're just going to go back to boring old Windows. I would like us to take advantage of this window of opportunity that we've got right now so that we can really advance what it is that we want to advance. In addition to that, there are other reasons why I think we should do this. The big one is it's good for you. You will be happier if you work on important things. It's fun. It's motivating. And we've heard a lot about negative feedback earlier today, but also working on important things gets us positive feedback. And a lot of times the positive feedback can outweigh the negative feedback. You know, when one person says, "It's ugly, you suck," but another person says, "This has made a measurable impact on my life and that of 200 people who rely on this." That's the kind of thing that you'll hear when you're working on things that are genuinely important. And ultimately, that leads to less chance of burnout. You feel like your life's work has meaning. This is also good for KDE, because it means that KDE as a community gets more contributors, and they have more jobs. It means that KDE has more money, More money in the form of donations, more money in the form of corporations sponsoring work, and hopefully, as Till alluded to, maintenance on work. It means grant money from the EU, from other agencies, and money helps us all continue to do what we're doing. And ultimately, that leads to more impact. It means KDE gets to do more cool things. It's also good for the world. I think that's why we're here. We're here because we believe that our work has an impact on the world that we live in, and we believe that humans on this earth have the right to halfway decent computers. I believe that. I think that's really important. And I think that more people should be able to use what we make because it's really excellent. And this is especially true in a world where it's increasingly obvious that our proprietary competition is predatory. They don't care about their users. They don't care about their employees and developers. They care about maximizing shareholder returns. And you know, I don't think, if I look at the people in this room, I don't think that's really the North Star for a lot of people here. At least I know it's not mine. So KDE can make huge gains in this world. And I know other people have felt this too, but it feels to me like KDE is right on the cusp of something big happening. We've been doing this work for a really long time as a multi-generational community, and I think we've got the chance to break out in a way that the world is providing an opportunity for. Because I think we're ready. We already know that our software is used by millions of people. We know this for a fact. It's probably even tens of millions. I would say it's maybe not even controversial that it's tens of millions. It might even be hundreds of millions. We don't know because we're nice and we don't spy on our users, but we know it's a lot of people because they like it. And that means that what we do matters. It makes a big deal here. It means that KDE is important in the world. Each one of us can have an outsized influence on making the world a better place. And that's why we're here. So I would encourage people to ask themselves, when there's an urgent need for better software, is mine ready? That's the big picture. And these are the things that we can evaluate ourselves on. Do people know that my amazing software exists? Does it look good enough to avoid being rejected? Can people get it? And does it work for them? Those are the things from the technical perspective. There's lots more, but that's the technical perspective. So thank you for everybody. Ready for questions, if anybody has any.
You seem very optimistic. So I have something that worries me. So let's see if you can make that worry disappear.
I hope so.
Regarding ease of adoption, I'm a bit worried that Copilot-like computers with Snapdragon chips will be very hard to port Linux to. And there's work that has to be done to every single device. So in the future, it will be nowhere as easy to install Linux on your machine. And you will have to buy certain kinds of laptops that support Linux out of the box. And I think that would greatly damage us. Am I wrong there?
It's a really great question. And from a certain perspective, you're absolutely right. These new ARM laptops have all the problems of every ARM device, which is that they're little unicorns that need to be babied in their own garden. And ultimately, I think this solution needs to come in the form of pre-installation. If we have companies that want to adopt Plasma on their devices, they'll do the work. They will say, well, here we have this hardware, and we have this operating system, this Linux-based operating system. What are the blockers to us shipping it? And that's how that will happen. Like in the end, I think we've all become very accustomed to taking hardware and wiping the OS and putting an OS of our choice on it. That's not going to get us to a high market share. I think we have to rely a little bit more on the institutions to take initiative, which means that we have to appeal to them. We have to make them want to do this work so that they do it.
Yes, I agree with you. So something your talk reminded me of was a book I read 20 years ago, actually. it was in a context of marketing KDE. How can we approach that? What's the theory behind it? The book is called Crossing the Chasm, and it's about technology adoption. Which are the steps you have to take, and where are the chasms that you have to cross? Which rivers do you have to cross? And what comes with these things? And I think we're either at the first or the second one. Not sure which. The second one is around 13.5%, and the first one is at like 5%. Regardless, I think there is two groups which form a really big opportunity for us. One, institutions. The pain is just too high right now. And another one which is really important is, I think, gamers. Because those are not free software people. This is a completely different crowd from us. They are enthusiastic, they are willing to experiment with things, and there is one thing which is really important to them: how fast can my game run? And
Yeah.
am I right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So if we can tell them, if you spend half a day installing Linux of whatever flavor, your Fortnite will run 25 frames faster.
For sure.
They'll be doing it. They don't care. And
Yeah.
this is the crowd that we need to catch. And I completely agree that YouTubers are a very important target group for us. Second thought is, he was talking about, can we actually get people to install our product on a Copilot PC? I don't think it matters at all. Because if there are people which want our software, there will be hardware vendors installing it. We already have them. I don't think for a gamer a Copilot PC laptop is really interesting. They'll be buying, I don't know, the Steam machine or something like that. So I don't get hung up on this AI thing. We don't need to be the first one on general purpose computers.
Yeah, I think
We need to find our niche.
I think there's a chicken-egg problem there, and once you get past a certain market share, I think you're absolutely right that people suddenly start caring about you, and it's up to us to get ourselves up that cliff so that we pass that level.
I will reject your idea that the design doesn't matter, but
I'm not saying it doesn't
no,
matter.
I got
think
you.
it's great.
I'm messing with you. So I have a question. This is, I don't know, call me crazy if you guys want, but I've always thought that, like, in human terms, the barrier to entry is huge when it comes to adopting kind of a derivative product of Linux. And because for anything that you do, you have to install that system. And maybe, yeah, you can install some of our applications without a Linux base, but it's mostly through that. And I was wondering if we had a way, for example, that one click runs an executable file on a Windows machine that, installs our system, KDE Linux, for example, without the need to download or partition your system, and use some kind of embedded VM manager there that can very quickly get people into seeing the system and then deciding whether they want to, like, put it on the hard drive, like on a separate partition. I'm thinking, like, could we get to something like that where we just don't think about the technical commitment that most people need to make to achieve this?
So I think that's possible. I saw on Reddit somebody had actually built a proof of concept of this recently, so it seems like it's actually possible. The really cool thing about this window of opportunity we have right now is that I think that specific thing, which is an excellent idea, is less important now. Because we're in a situation where people are already experiencing enough pain that even if what we've got has still a little bit of pain, if it's less pain, it's better pain, right? So when everything's good, we have to convince people that adoption is zero cost. When everything's already on fire and they've already got costs imposed upon them by the rest of the world, we just need to make sure we're below that cost level so that we're competitive there, right? We should absolutely do that. I think so. But right now, I think it's important that we be less painful than everybody else.
Okay, I have a little bit different thing here. I've always wanted to have a Linux machine at work, and I have always had to fight with IT that I actually get to use the Linux machine in the network. Now in my current company, in my work machine, I have to install an application called my iTunes. It's a little spy application that checks your computer, checks that you have the hard disk encrypted, checks that you have secure on, and it checks all kinds of stuff. I have a feeling that in the Linux world we haven't really paid attention to the needs of the big corporations and the big fleets.
Yeah.
So the fleet management of thousands of PCs, that's something that we lack in the Linux community, totally, not just KDE. But what other kind of barriers like this do you see that we have for major deployments in big companies? Because that is a very big share of the desktops today.
It is, for sure. We heard a little bit about that from the talk just before mine. Patrick talked about some custom solutions that can be made there. Maybe there's a case to be made for all of these companies and communities standardizing on tools and working on the same thing, because I agree with you that that's very important for that use case.
Okay, I just have one question. So you said about more awareness, right? And also, for example, present at external events. And I've been thinking about this a lot because in the free software and Linux desktop community, like, we're making awesome technologies and building software, but often it's not getting really used outside our community, and because there's just not the awareness for it there.
Yep.
And at the same time also, like, outside of the free software community, there are cool technologies, and I mean, they often have a lot more money also to build cool technologies. So, but we don't really use them, or yeah, because also we are not aware. Like, there's a kind of missing link between, like, everyone is kind of working on their own only, and yeah, present at external events, I feel like is a one of really good ways to solve that, but it's kind of hard also. Like, what kind of opportunities do you see there? Like, funding people to go to some other tech conferences, or I don't know, like, what do you think?
Well, this is where I think the diversity of the KDE community is really important, right? Because we have some people in this room who are paid to work on KDE software. There are a lot of people in this room who work on something else. And by virtue of working outside of our bubble, all of you in that situation are seeing what it's like out there in the rest of the world, and seeing what the needs are, and seeing who's missing what we're doing, who has no idea what it is. And so I think the best ambassadors to be figuring out where that need is are people who have a foot in both worlds, who are KDE contributors, but who also do work and live outside of the KDE community so that they can help to bridge that gap. I think that's where the information can come from, because I certainly don't have that information. I have no idea. I'm completely clueless. So all of you who know what it's like out there in the rest of that world can help to make that possible. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Nate, for giving us a bit of inspiration for the big picture. In a not too far future, we will have a session in the other room about artists and Wayland, and in here we will have a series of quick talks about communication, about commit messages, about Plasma Mobile and funding. And yeah, we'll see you in a bit.